Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Man in American Comics. Start Regenerative Healing Factor. Chapter 21. Walk. Frank was never one to be indecisive. He knew he was being implicated the moment he saw a dozen gangsters turn up. Without hesitation, Frank immediately turned around and rushed into the alley. Lu Chuang hurriedly followed behind Frank. He didn't want to face so many armed forces alone. The two returned to the alley, bypassed the location of the warehouse, and fled outside from the fork. The sound of chaotic footsteps followed closely, like a group of rabid dogs seeing flesh and blood, biting them tightly and not letting go. In this small and gloomy environment, it gave people a sense of suffocation and oppression. Suddenly, Frank, who was running at the front, seemed to notice something, and his face turned cold. He took out a Browning automatic pistol from his waist, and put on a standard shooting posture towards the front. Just at the moment, several sneaky figures blocked their way. The attackers did not expect Frank's reaction to be so fast. Before they raised their guns to aim, Frank pulled the trigger continuously at an extremely fast speed. Boom, boom, boom. The Browning automatic pistol modified by Frank made a terrifying sound at this moment. The shell case jumped out of the gate with the smoke, and the bullet head burst out of the barrel immediately, tearing the heads of the attackers in an instant. The roaring gunshots echoed in the narrow alley, making people feel their eardrums tearing apart. These gunshots seemed to announce the start of the war. Da 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 da. The gangster rushed over from behind, and the automatic rifle in his hand frantically poured ammunition at the two of them, and the dazzling firelight illuminated the surrounding darkness. Facing the ferocious rain of bullets, Lu Chuang and Frank immediately retreated into the recesses of the walls on both sides. The powerful firepower instantly suppressed them and made them unable to move. What was even worse was the sound of footsteps coming from the front exit again. Those few attackers were not the only ones surrounding them. Lu Chuang Yigao took a bold look outside and found that they were surrounded by a group of gangsters, so he quickly retracted his head. He looked at Frank on the opposite side and asked loudly, "What's our plan?" "Get out. This plan sounds plausible." Lu Chuang took out a poor little pistol. He should have prepared a few more bombs earlier. Immediately afterwards, Frank threw a smoke bomb and threw it on the ground. The thick smoke soon covered the surrounding space, and the already invisible alley became more cloudy and foggy. Hearing the gunshots outside began to weaken, Frank immediately rushed out, followed by Lu Chuang, who seemed more reckless than Frank's actions, and didn't care if a bullet accidentally injured himself. In the smoke, the gangsters blocking the front suddenly noticed two figures rushing towards them. "Damn, they're here." Before the words were finished, a few golden bullets instantly tore open their flesh and blood, and directly blocked the remaining words in their throats. Before one of the gangsters who survived by chance had time to rejoice, Frank pounced on him like a bloodthirsty beast, grabbed his neck with his powerful palm, pressed the muzzle of the gun directly to his jaw and pulled the trigger. White concretions splashed out from the top of his head. As expected of the Punisher, it really is fierce enough. Lu Chuang sighed in his heart, and suddenly felt tearing air sounds hit his ears, and the butt of the gun hit him hard on the head. Lu Chuang swayed but did not fall down. When he turned his head to look, he saw a black hole appeared in front of the muzzle. Boom! A trace of white smoke came out of the gun, and a man looked at Lu Chuang in astonishment. I saw that Lu Chuang maintained the posture of falling backwards, but stopped strangely halfway, as if he suddenly tensed his body to forcibly resist the momentum of the bullet, showing a strange half-bent posture. But the problem is that he obviously shot the opponent in the head. How could he still react? At this moment, Lu Chuang's body in front of him suddenly straightened up slowly. Under the man's horrified gaze, Lu Chuang smiled brightly at the bloody wound on his forehead. "Aren't you surprised? Are you surprised?" After speaking, Lu Chuang raised his gun and returned a bullet to the other party. The man wanted to imitate Lu Chuang's astonishing maneuvers, but failed, and fell down neatly. Lu Chuang turned his head and found that Frank, who had already eliminated all his opponents, was looking at him. But Frank just glanced at him and didn't say much. Before the smoke cleared, the two finally ran to the street. Boom! Suddenly there was a roar of engines in the alley, and two gangsters rushed out of the alley on a motorcycle, and the man sitting behind raised a submachine gun and fired at them. The intention to keep them is extremely strong. At this moment, Frank couldn't help wondering, what exactly did Lu Chuang do to make these gangsters so crazy? In fact, even Lu Chuang didn't expect the other party's reaction to be so great. In a short period of time, so many people gathered to encircle and suppress them. I didn't blow up their lair. Can't it? On the other side, the frozen warehouse deep in the alley. The flames here have been extinguished, and the twisted shape-shifting iron door lies quietly on the ground in the distance, and there is only a huge blackened hole where the warehouse's original iron door was. Several gangsters with guns walked into the frozen warehouse quickly, and saw charred corpses and gun remains everywhere on the warehouse curry, with limbs and pieces of meat scattered all over the floor. I don't know if it was pork or something else. The smell of burnt flesh filled the air. A man looked at the ruins and finally found something. He immediately walked to the corner and turned a corpse over. What came into view was a severely burned face. Through the contours and features of the face, the men could barely recognize that the other party was the person they were looking for. Suddenly, his expression changed drastically, his hands trembled uncontrollably, and the last thing he wanted to see happened. Realizing the seriousness of the matter, the man took out his mobile phone and made a call. Vladimir, there is indeed a problem with the trading place tonight. There was an explosion in the warehouse. All the people in Jinbin died, and none of our people survived. Your brother Anatoly died. After speaking, there was no response from the other end of the phone. The man didn't dare to hang up the phone, so he could only wait patiently. Finally, a hoarse voice came slowly. Who is the murderer? The man replied tremblingly. When we arrived at the scene, we found two suspicious people. They were probably the ones who made the explosion. Catch them for me. The uncontrollable roar broke out suddenly, directly interrupting the man's words. Even through the phone, the man could still feel Vladimir's monstrous anger, and he yelled at him through the phone like crazy, "Send everyone out. Those two damn murderers must be caught. I want alive. IF King want to live." Boom. Along with the loud bang from the other end of the phone, there was only a busy tone on the phone. The man put away the phone with lingering fear. He knew that this time the matter had become serious. You know, the person in charge of this transaction is Vladimir's younger brother. The death of Anatoly drove the leader of the Russian Ross gang completely crazy. The man took a deep breath. Then, he told the others. Call all the members of the gang, we must catch those two people. Remember, you have to live. Da 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 da. Deafening and dense gunshots sounded, and Lu Chuang pulled the trigger continuously against the bullet rain. But in the face of a fast-moving motorcycle, his gun's muzzle was a little bit broken, and the bullets didn't know where to go, but the opponent's bullets hit him with blood. Taking advantage of Lu Chuang standing in front of him, Frank calmly raised the muzzle of his gun and killed the gangster holding a submachine gun with one shot. Regardless of the oncoming motorcycle, Frank hit the driver with another shot. Boom! The out-of-control motorcycle fell to the ground, coasted a few meters away, and hit the wall laterally. At the moment, the smoke in the alley began to dissipate, and Yingying Zujuo's figure was rapidly approaching. Go check the car, Frank growled. He quickly changed the clips, and he took Browning and fired wildly into the alley, so as to hold back the pursuers. Lu Chuang understood what Frank meant and immediately ran to the location of the motorcycle. After the impact just now, the surface of the motorcycle was slightly damaged, but fortunately the important parts were not damaged. Lu Chuang set up the motorcycle and sat on the driver's seat. Frank backed away in Lu Chuang's direction while shooting at the alley. Counting the number of bullets in the magazine, Frank turned and sat directly on the rear seat of the motorcycle just before the magazine was emptied. However, Lu Chuang did not drive immediately. Lu Chuang turned his head in embarrassment and looked at Frank. Sorry, I forgot, I don't seem to have driven a motorcycle before. Frank. To say that Frank is really a tough guy, in the face of this situation, he can still maintain a deadpan expression. Then, he asked a very fatal question. You can't drive, why should you sit in the driver's seat? Instinctive reaction. Quote. The gangsters in the rear had already caught up, and the two had no time to change positions. Frank gritted his teeth and roared, drive. Hearing Frank's words, Lu Chuang stopped hesitation and twisted the accelerator handle suddenly. Then show your shame. The roar of the engine suddenly exploded. The motorcycle started instantly with a whoosh, and the strong inertia almost threw Frank out. In less than half a second, the motorcycle rushed into the road, directly throwing off the group of gangsters who had just reached the entrance of the alley. The so-called step on the accelerator to the end, and leave the rest to God. At the moment, Lu Chuang can be said to have brought this sentence into full play. Because this guy was almost blinded by the strong wind, he instinctively grasped the grip of the motorcycle. And Frank in the back seat is holding on to the rear seat armrest of the motorcycle. It seemed that there was only the whistling wind in his ears, and Frank looked at the scene passing by quickly. Even with Frank's strong psychological quality, he couldn't control his heartbeat at this moment. To be honest, Frank regretted it a bit. It's not that I regret why I let Lu Chuang drive. I just regret, why did I get in this car? Is it not good to live? Boom. In the dead of night, a motorcycle was speeding down the driveway in Brooklyn. Lu Chuang was driving the motorcycle, letting the strong wind blow on his cheeks, grasping the handlebars of the motorcycle with both hands, and with the roar of the engine, the speed of the motorcycle had already reached close to the maximum speed. At such a speed, the motorcycle can drive steadily on the road. It is not at all obvious that the driver is a novice driver who has just started on the road. Frank gradually adapted to the current speed of the car, and shouted loudly, "You are lying, you can drive, and you are very good at it." No way, the speed is too fast. The wind in their ears made it difficult for them to hear other voices clearly, and they couldn't hear anything unless they were loud enough. I really don't know how to drive, maybe my ability is stronger. Lu Chuang also yelled. Lu Chuang is not lying, he has never driven a motorcycle. As for other cars, there is no need to say more. You can't even pass the second subject of the driver's license test. But for some reason, when Lu Chuang touched the motorcycle, he suddenly felt an indescribable sense of familiarity, so he subconsciously sat on the driver's seat. In the process of driving the motorcycle, Lu Chuang has become more and more proficient in the operation of the motorcycle. From the panic at the beginning, he has become more stable. Now he feels as if he is controlling his own limbs, and he can already control it with ease, with this motorcycle. With such an unbelievable ability, Lu Chuang quickly thought of his super high school level talent. A super high school level stuntman. Because the powerful undead feature is too dazzling, so Lu Chuang has been ignoring the description of this talent. A stuntman who does all the thrilling shots. Stunt is the real job, immortality is just an incidental feature. These two characteristics made Lu Chuang think of two people. One is also a character in the Marvel world, Nicholas Jiaoxi, who is a motorcycle stunt driver on the surface, but Ghost Rider behind his back, and the other is a character from The Tutor, who is Skaru, the child of the rainbow, is also a stuntman known as the Regenerative Healing Factor. Compared with Nicholas Jiaoxi, Lu Chuang feels that his talent is more inclined to the latter. In other words, it should be an enhanced version of Skaru. Frank naturally didn't believe Lu Chuang's words. If he was driving at this speed, he might not be able to drive as steadily as Lu Chuang. At this time, Frank glanced at the corner ahead, and suddenly a black Jeep appeared. "They are catching up, don't get hit," Frank reminded loudly. Lu Chuang also saw the Jeep appear. And judging from the opponent's route, it is obvious that they want to block their way. "Hold on," Lu Chuang roared, not only did not slow down the speed, but directly increased the speed of the motorcycle. Seeing that the Jeep ahead was getting closer and closer, Lu Chuang adjusted the center of gravity of his body, pulled the steering handle of the motorcycle violently, and tilted the entire body on the ground. Relying on the strong centrifugal force, the motorcycle drifted sideways against the Jeep at an incredible angle. The distance between the two cars is less than half a meter. Frank in the back seat could even feel the stern wind from the Jeep brushing against his cheek. Then Lu Chuang stabilized the motorcycle again, passed the Jeep and turned to the left. The whole process is thrilling and exciting. If you are not careful, you will end up with a car crash. "How is my driving skill?" Lu Chuang asked proudly. "It's okay, but it's a bit fancy." Frank's face was tense, as cold as a Terminator, and it was difficult to see the tension from his expression. However, the group of lingering guys coming. Lu Chuang looked forward. Sure enough, several Jeeps emerged from both sides of the driveway. One by one, the gangsters leaned most of their bodies out of the car windows, holding automatic rifles and shooting at the motorcycles. "Maid, what an enmity, this is to chase Tianya Cape." Lu Chuang cursed angrily, and immediately controlled the front of the car to dodge left and right. The motorcycle twisted like a snake, making it difficult for the gangsters to lock their positions. Frank didn't say anything. He released both hands to change the magazine of the pistol, and then raised his gun to return fire at the Jeep convoy. Soon he hit the windshield of a Jeep, and the car lost control and crashed into the street. Boom! A shot was fired, and Frank let out a suppressed muffled groan. Lu Chuang took a look at the sound, only to see Frank clutching his left arm in embarrassment, with blood gushing from between his fingers. Obviously hit by a bullet. "Are you all right?" Lu Chuang asked with some concern. "Concentrate on driving," Frank growled, and continued to pull the trigger with his remaining right arm, killing several gangsters who emerged. At the same time, the last magazine was also fired. "You seem to be seriously injured." Lu Chuang's voice came again. "It's all said to concentrate." Frank turned and stared, only to be stunned on the spot. Lu Chuang was also facing Frank, lowering his head as if studying the extent of his right arm injury, completely ignoring the road ahead, with only one hand still controlling the motorcycle. But that didn't make Frank feel even a little bit more at ease. "Fack, what the FK are you doing?" Frank couldn't stand it anymore. He couldn't maintain that iron-blooded tough guy anymore. His roar almost overwhelmed the gunshots. "Didn't you see? I'm driving." Lu Chuang looked up at Frank. Seeing that sincere expression, Frank wondered if he had a navigation on his forehead. Otherwise, why is this guy staring at himself instead of looking ahead and driving? "Don't worry, one hand is enough to drive." Lu Chuang took out his pistol, grinned and said, "As for those guys, leave it to me." Open black lens bracket unlocked successfully. Close black lens bracket. Title: Super High School Level Sharpshooter. Explanation: there is a reason for the bullet to turn. The moment the shooter is ejected from the chamber, the shooter shakes his wrist rapidly to give the bullet a horizontal acceleration, thus forming an arc. This is the gun fighting technique. Feature: bullet time. Bullet time. Powerful skills from many classic gunfight movies. At the moment of receiving the title, Lu Chuang's pupils suddenly dilated, and his breathing became short of breath. At this moment, Lu Chuang seemed to hear a violent heartbeat. The heart was like a high-speed engine, continuously providing more energy for physical activities and accelerating the flow of blood. Lu Chuang is no stranger to this feeling. He has experienced it countless times in the research institute. This is the expression of the human body being stimulated to secrete adrenaline, but the difference is that the effect is more exaggerated. Lu Chuang felt that his heart rate had exceeded 400 beats per minute, and he could have detonated bombs hundreds of times before. With the secretion of a large amount of adrenaline, Lu Chuang instantly entered a very wonderful state. His sensory ability is constantly soaring, and the things in front of him seem to be getting slower and slower. His eyes became as if they were still. In this state, Lu Chuang's thinking becomes extremely active, and he has a panoramic view of all the information captured by the vision, and then analyzes and calculates through the brain step by step, so as to make the most accurate judgment. The driving route of the Jeep, the flight trajectory of the bullet, the flow of the wind speed. It seems that everything has become traceable. Without aiming, following the rhythm of breathing, Lu Chuang instinctively raised his pistol and fired. The spinning bullets shot out from the muzzle of the gun. Captured by Lu Chuang's horrific visual dynamics, the bullet pulled out a long trajectory through the air, rubbed red heat, and crashed straight into another bullet that was attacking the motorcycle. Boom! Unbiased, the two bullets collided passionately in midair, making a crisp sound. Under the strong kinetic energy, the warhead compresses shapeshifting, and finally becomes a discus falling from the air. Shoot to intercept another bullet. Frank's eyes widened in disbelief. Although he doesn't have Lu Chuang's abnormal dynamic vision, he can barely see some blurred images. Stop the bullet with the bullet. Frank is not an idiot. He knows that this is definitely not a coincidence. After all, the probability is too low. Even Frank, who was born in the Marine Corps, has never encountered or heard of such a thing. However, if this is not a coincidence, but a deliberate move, this marksmanship is too terrifying. No, it should be said that this is not a marksmanship that humans can master at all. Lu Chuang didn't know the shock in Frank's heart. At the moment Lu Chuang, who is in bullet time, can control the motorcycle under him more freely. He controlled the motorcycle with one hand, and raised the pistol with the other to shoot again towards the rear. Boom. The bullet was ejected, and along the planned path, it hit the front wheel of a jeep with incomparable precision. The jeep, which was driving at high speed, spun violently. Amidst the screeching sound of tire friction, the car lost control and crashed into another jeep. The implicated jeep couldn't dodge in time, the whole car was knocked out of the driveway, and the front of the car plunged into the fire hydrant on the side of the street. Under the action of strong inertia, the driver was thrown out of the car directly, flying more than 10 meters into the air and falling to the ground. Lu Chuang pouted. The car was driving so fast without wearing a seat belt, isn't this rushing to reincarnate? Only one bullet was used. Lu Chuang reduced the number of jeeps chasing them down to 4. The man who had spoken to Vladimir earlier, he was sitting in one of the jeeps. Seeing Lu Chuang's sudden display of majesty, the man's face was extremely ugly, and he shouted, "Slow down, don't be targeted by that guy, let our people intercept at the intersection in front." Soon, the 3 jeeps slowed down and separated slightly from the motorcycle. "There's an ambush ahead." Frank sensed their intentions and reminded weakly. Whether it is driving skills or marksmanship, Lu Chuang's performance far exceeded Frank's expectations. His words didn't make Lu Chuang feel the slightest bit nervous. If it weren't for the relatively low-end mobile phones in this era, Lu Chuang would have wanted to order a song, "Catch Shrimp," on the spot to add to the fun. The motorcycle was speeding all the way to the intersection. Sure enough, the gangsters had already blocked the intersection. There were 6 vehicles blocking the middle of the driveway. A dozen strong men armed with automatic rifles and used the car body as a cover to surround the motorcycle directly in front, completely cutting off the road. The way Chuang and Frank went. "What's our plan?" Frank asked aloud. "Rush over." "This plan sounds plausible." Frank did not stop Lu Chuang from making this crazy-sounding decision. Faced with such a situation, even in his heyday, he might stay here, and Lu Chuang would simply let Lu Chuang control everything. Definitely, mainly because he can't get out of the car now. Seeing that the intersection was getting closer and closer, Lu Chuang's pupils kept dilated, and an excited smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. The heart was still beating violently, and the blood was continuously being pumped to accelerate. Lu Chuang's skin was reddened to the naked eye, and Frank in the back seat could feel an astonishing heat radiating from his whole body. The body is crazily secreting adrenaline. Sensory ability is being further enhanced. The brain is working rapidly, and everyone's position is clearly constructed in the mind, and all the surrounding environmental details are classified and processed by the brain, and finally the most reasonable plan is obtained. "Sit tight, I'm going to start pretending." Suddenly, Lu Chuang let go of his grip on the handlebars of the motorcycle, raised his pistol, and swung his arms and wrists violently. Boom, boom, 2 gunshots sounded as if at the same time. The gun muzzle released a lot of gunpowder smoke under the slow motion of slow motion, and the bullets sprayed out from the barrel, stirring up white sound lines. With the high-speed rotation of the bullets, the original straight trajectory of the 2 bullets gradually deviated. They drew an exaggerated arc in midair and directly bypassed the car body, entered the throat of a strong man, and then came out from behind the neck. With undiminished momentum, the bullet penetrated into the heart of another strong man again. Puff, puff, puff. With the sound of bullets entering the flesh, 4 strong men fell to the ground at the same time. The gangsters were stunned, looking at the corpse in astonishment, as if they saw a ghost. Where did the bullet come from? They hid behind the bunker, and it stands to reason that it is impossible for the bullet to hit their position. And there were only 2 shots, why did 4 die? Too many doubts lingered in the minds of the gangsters, but Lu Chuang didn't give them time to think. The pistols rang out more intensively in an instant, took their lives. Fire! Such an unreasonable scene made the gangsters panic. They roared and held the automatic rifles with trembling hands, and began to shoot flames at Lu Chuang. Lu Chuang didn't have the slightest intention to stop, and the motorcycle nimbly shuttled between the hail of bullets. With the help of bullet time, the bullets always pass by the motorcycle at a distance of a few millimeters, and the bullets that cannot be dodged are directly intercepted by Lu Chuang in midair. It's just that in the eyes of the gangsters, the bullets seemed to be deliberately avoiding the motorcycles. With so many automatic rifles firing at the same time, none of the bullets could successfully hit the target during the whole process. Huge amounts of motorcycles. Immediately, the gunshots became more and more frantic. Da 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 da. In the fierce gunshots, from time to time, there were crisp and exciting bullet collision sounds. Lu Chuang's operation can be described as extremely subtle. The moment the last bullet escaped from the barrel, the magazine slid out, and a new magazine was connected at the same time. The gunshots sounded almost seamlessly, full of flowing beauty. The surge of adrenaline has greatly strengthened Lu Chuang's physical fitness, making the recoil of the pistol almost equal to zero, and continuous shooting will not affect the precision of each bullet. Frank in the back seat stared wide-eyed at what happened in front of him. Frank saw Lu Chuang's movements more clearly from the back seat than the gangsters. Crisp and neat, yet casual. It seems that every shot is the result of precise calculations, full of self-confidence and unthinkable marksmanship. Lu Chuang suppressed more than a dozen automatic rifles with a single pistol, and let the Navy. Frank, who was born in the Marine Corps, was stunned. Who can tell him, is such a thing as bullet turning really scientific? What is the principle? Monster, this is a monster. Seeing the companions who fell one after another and the motorcycles getting closer and closer, the remaining gangsters were completely terrified. No matter how they shot, the motorcycle was still unscathed, and the bullets were all empty without exception. While they were hiding behind the bunker, those damned bullets could always find their exact location and take away the lives of their companions one by one. Every time a companion falls, it will leave huge amounts of haze in their hearts. This feeling is like a knife on their necks, and the constant threat of death is crushing their willpower. The gangsters have long forgotten about the bullshit catch order. They squeezed the trigger tightly with their fingers, and shot ferociously at Lu Chuang, just hoping that one bullet could hit this terrifying monster. At this moment, the motorcycle was less than 20 meters away from the intersection. The originally scattered bullets gradually became denser and almost covered the road ahead of the motorcycle. Lu Chuang didn't panic, and seemingly casually raised his hand and shot to the right. Boom! Suddenly, the billboard of the street shop suddenly fell to the ground, making a loud noise. The billboard just fell on the trash can on the side of the street, forming a slope. The motorcycle exploded with a dull roar, and rushed to the street. The tires grabbed the billboard tightly, and with a strong inertial force, it suddenly flew into the air, flying over the heads of all the gangsters. Boom, 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 boom. Lu Chuang swung his arm in midair, and pulled the trigger with his fingers continuously. Several bullets came out of the chamber, hitting the gangsters' bodies in a strange C-shape from high to low. Before the motorcycle landed, all the bullets in the magazine had been fired. Boom! The motorcycle landed on the ground and let out a low growl, and the gangsters behind were shot and fell to the ground at the same time. This time there was no obstruction from the convoy. The motorcycle continued to run towards the distance, and soon disappeared from everyone's sight. This seemingly long shootout actually took only a dozen seconds. 4 jeeps arrived late, and the remaining gangsters got out. There was a dead silence. The strong smell of gunpowder smoke still lingered in the air. The gangsters looked at the massacred corpses all over the ground. Cold sweat couldn't help rolling down their faces, and some even trembled uncontrollably. Everyone's heart felt a little cold. So many armed forces intercepted, but they were directly wiped out by 2 people. Is this still human? The other side. After confirming that there were no other ambushes or pursuers, Lu Chuang drove his motorcycle to a dark corner. Call. Lu Chuang let out a few breaths slowly. His violent heartbeat gradually slowed down, the flow of time also returned to normal, and his astonishing body temperature slowly dropped. Lu Chuang only felt a sudden strong sense of weakness, and he lost control and fell to the ground. On the ground. Bullet time, which is as omnipotent as God's vision, is not completely without side effects. If it is only turned on for a short time, it will not be too dangerous. But if you want to maintain the bullet time for a long time, your body functions must bear a super intensive load. After all, the heart beats like a pile driver, the adrenaline in the body is almost filling the whole body, and the blood pressure is soaring. As long as it is an individual, it is certain can't stand it. If it were a normal person with a slightly weaker physique, it would either be heart failure or cerebral congestion. For Lu Chuang, who maintains the bullet time for several minutes at once, his body organs have already been overwhelmed, so after the bullet time is released and the excitement of adrenaline is removed, the feeling of dying comes flooding up. It's just that, while the body organs are failing, a wave of heat is quickly repairing the damage to Lu Chuang's body. Seeing Lu Chuang collapsed suddenly, Frank dragged his injured body and ran over to check. Finding that Lu Chuang had just passed out, he carried Lu Chuang onto his shoulder with his uninjured arm and quickly left the scene. 2 hours later, in a remote hut, Frank handled his gunshot wounds skillfully. After putting on his clothes, Frank walked out of the hall and looked at Lu Chuang, who was holding a Gatling and making strange noises. Seeing this lively appearance, he didn't feel a little weak. Frank came to Lu Chuang in 2 or 3 steps. "This is not your toy, put it down. Don't be so stingy, I'm your savior." Lu Chuang reluctantly let go of Gatling. It has to be said that Frank's safe house is much better than his room, with all kinds of firearms and weapons, even heavy fire weapons such as Gatling and bazooka in stock. It is simply a small arsenal. Lu Chuang, who now has the talent of a super high school sharpshooter, can easily distinguish various types of firearms and configurations. He can see that Frank's weapons have been carefully modified, including the Browning automatic pistol, which is comparable to ordinary pistols. Much bigger. However, Lu Chuang has a strong feeling that he also seems to be able to modify firearms. Lu Chuang, who discovered this, couldn't wait to find a gun to try. Hearing Lu Chuang's words, Frank twitched. Whose fault do you think this is all about? If Lu Chuang hadn't implicated him, he wouldn't have escaped in such a panic. Lu Chuang looked at Frank, the tough guy who was shot but still full of energy, and said with some doubts, "Well, why don't you tell me the truth? Have you participated in transformation experiments before, such as the Super Soldier Project or something, from a young age?" He turned into a Superman with big chest muscles. "That's Captain America, not me." Frank is sullen. It's no secret about Captain America. There is also Captain America's Museum in New York, which contains records of Captain America's deeds, as well as his love and hatred with his good friend Bucky. Then it doesn't make sense. Lu Chuang muttered softly. Frank's physique seems a bit inhuman. Frank didn't bother with these boring topics, and said in a deep voice, "I'll tell you one thing, we are in trouble. Now the Russian Ross gang is looking for our whereabouts everywhere, and issued a high reward for us on the underground exchange. It seems that he doesn't want to let us go like this." Lu Chuang was taken aback. "Is it because I messed up their deal?" "No, it's because you killed the biggest leader of the Russian Ross gang, Vladimir's younger brother Anatoly." Lu Chuang was very surprised. He thought about it carefully. Could it be that the Russian Ross farmer was Anatoly? No wonder the group of gangsters pursued them so persistently. It turned out that it was because he killed their second boss. However, Frank continued, "It's not over yet. There is another wave of people who also issued a bounty to us. The bounty is not as rich as the Russian Ross gang, but it is enough to attract the attention of many people." "Why are there still people, and where did they come from?" "They are the trading partners of the Russian Ross gang tonight. The person in charge is called Kaki, who is a well-known leader of a drug dealer organization. But as far as I know, Kaki recently found a backer, and now he is working for Jin Bin." "Wait, there's something about Jin Bin here. The front is fine, but Lu Chuang is a little confused when he hears the back." Kim Bin, Marvel's famous villain. The biggest leader of New York's underground forces, no matter in terms of strength or influence, Jin Bin is an existence that cannot be underestimated. The commission that Lu Chuang accepted was to disrupt an illegal transaction of a gangster. But the problem is that the information provided only shows that the Russian Ross gang and a drug dealer organization were involved in this transaction, but the person in charge of this transaction was not mentioned. How did Lu Chuang know that one side was the relative of the leader of the Russian Ross gang? "Brother, the other side is actually Jin Bing's subordinate. Isn't this showing off people?" Now, he has to face the bounty offered by Jin Bin and the Russian Ross gang at the same time. "How much is our reward?" Jin Bing gave 5 million, and the Russian Ross gang gave 10 million. "As long as we are caught, we can get a total of 15 million United States dollars. This wave of blood loss." "What blood loss?" Frank frowned. "I'm talking about the commission I accepted. The employer's request was to destroy the drug trade of the Russian Ross gang and provide a place for the trade. I thought it was an ordinary gang deal, but I never expected it. In the end, the Golden offended both the Russian Ross gang." Lu Chuang said with a somewhat depressed expression. the most outrageous thing is that the reward for this commission is only a mere 100,000 United States dollars. Isn't this bullying honest people? Frank looked at Lu Chuang expressionlessly. Although he hasn't been in contact for a long time, he doesn't feel that Lu Chuang has anything to do with the word honesty. In short, Lu Chuang revealed the whole situation to Frank, and he had nothing to hide anyway. Although Frank didn't mention it from beginning to end. But Lu Chuang knew that many of his secrets had been exposed to the other party, including his identity as a mercenary. Ignoring Lu Chuang's ugly face that only cares about money, Frank slowly said, "An important member of the Ross gang in Russia trades drugs with Jin Bing's subordinates, but the employer can easily know where they are trading." Quote. ADV. Advertisement. There is a problem with this commission. After pondering for a moment, Frank suddenly came to an unexpected conclusion. Hearing this, Lu Chuang was thoughtful. Listen to you, this commission is really not right. Back then, I had to travel all over New York by car to find a gangster, but this time it was easy to find it. It was a little too smooth. How come it feels like someone dug a hole to lure me into it on purpose? Frank said calmly, "I'm afraid it wasn't aimed at you, but just happened to be met by you." You mean, someone is using this entrustment to fish? Frank nodded and asked, "Who is your employer?" I don't know. The employer's information is confidential. Maybe I can find some clues after I go back. Under Frank's reminder, the more Lu Chuang thought about it, the more he felt that this commission was weird. Originally, he was just to unlock the achievement, and when he saw that it was a gangster's drug trade, he accepted the commission for convenience. But now he found that this commission seemed to be a deep pit, waiting for someone to jump into it. Lu Chuang is going to go back and ask the weasel. Speaking of this, Lu Chuang looked at Frank. By the way, why did you appear there? Frank was silent and did not answer Lu Chuang's question. Lu Chuang immediately became unhappy. This is a bit too much. I answered everything you asked tonight, but you didn't say anything. After all, you are all comrades who have experienced life and death, and I saved your life. There is no need to mention this. Frank has seen Lu Chuang's thick skin. Frank was silent for a while, and finally said, "Cage was my target, but you killed him." It was a coincidence indeed, as Lu Chuang was commissioned to be there, and Frank had his own goals tonight. That is to kill Kaki, who is the leader of a drug trafficking organization. If Lu Chuang didn't show up tonight, Frank would still take action to get rid of Kaki. With his style, he would definitely not let go of Curry's other gangsters, and the ending would probably be no different from now. I see. Lu Chuang nodded. By the way, I still don't know your name. My name is Lu Chuang, and I'm an ordinary migrant worker. Frank replied coldly, I've answered your question, now you should leave. You'd better find a place where no one will know and hide, and don't let them find you. Why hide? Did you not understand what I said? We have been offered a reward. As long as you show your face, they will find you again soon. Lu Chuang touched his face. Are you sure they can recognize me? Quote. Frank was speechless. Indeed, Asian faces are hard to distinguish from their point of view. If two people are not put together, the difference in their appearance is basically unrecognizable. This is a natural camouflage, just like black people automatically hide at night. Besides, aren't you also offered a reward? Are you planning to hide too? It's better for them to find me, so that I don't need to waste my time looking for them. Frank said coldly, if he was afraid of being exposed, he would not go to fight criminals with nothing in disguise. All he wanted was everything criminals feel horrified at the sight of their own faces. Feeling the strong killing intent in Frank's bones, Lu Chuang knew that he was worrying for nothing. This fierce man probably wished that the criminal would come to his door by himself. Lu Chuang stood up, found a pen and paper and wrote down a number. All right, if you need help then, just call me. After all, he was the one who implicated Frank, and if something happened to him, his conscience would be so bad. After speaking, Lu Chuang left the room. Before leaving, he took a reluctant look at Gatling. Seeing that Frank was vigilant, he was afraid that this guy would suddenly run out with Gatlin in his arms. In the dimly lit room, a gentleman in a suit and leather shoes pushed open the door. Ignoring the heavily armed Russians in the room, the gentleman walked into the room slowly. In the depths of the room, stood a short-haired Russian man. He looked at a charred corpse on the table with a dazed expression. The gentleman glanced at the corpse and said calmly, "Vladimir, my employer expresses his condolences to you. He deeply regrets your brother's departure. However, there are some things we still need to discuss." After a few seconds, Vladimir turned to look at him. "Jin doesn't want to talk. He should come here by himself instead of sending you as an assistant to perfuse me. Sorry, my employer can't come when he encounters some problems, but he has given full authority to handle it. You can rest assured about this." Vladimir came in front of the gentleman, with a cold light in his eyes, like a raging brown bear, full of gnawing anger. "I said, let Faith himself talk about it, not one of his dogs." The gentleman narrowed his eyes, his tone remained calm. "Please don't mention this name." "Oh, do you mean Kim Bin, or Wilson Faith?" Vladimir's eyes were cold, and he glared cruelly at the gentleman. As the leader of the Russian Ross gang, he was never afraid of anyone, including Jin Bing, who is now famous. He tapped the gentleman's chest hard with his fingers, and the huge amounts of strength pushed the gentleman back a few steps. "Your name is Wesley, right? You go and tell Faith K. If he wants to talk seriously, then let him come to me by himself. Don't use this perfunctory attitude." After being treated like this by Vladimir, Wesley was not angry, and straightened his collar leisurely. Immediately afterwards, Wesley said, "Since you don't want to talk about business affairs, let's talk about private affairs. About the 2 attackers who blew up the warehouse, my employer has sent people to investigate and find out the identity of one of the attackers. I believe that we will be able to follow these clues to investigate another attacker soon, the identity of the author." "What did you say?" Hearing his words, Vladimir took a sudden step forward and stared at Wesley. "Tell me, who is that damned attacker? Don't worry, I can understand your anger. After all, we also sacrificed a lot of people and lost a batch of goods. You are not the only one who wants to find the 2 attackers." Wesley did not answer Vladimir's question, and continued, "You should learn to control your anger. I know that your brother's death makes you very sad, but some things cannot be avoided after all. Ms. Gao and Mr. Shin already know about your brother's death. They think that you lack a strong helper, which will affect your business. They plan to re-evaluate you. They think you may no longer be competent for some jobs." Resisting his eagerness to know the heart of the attacker, Vladimir gritted his teeth and said, "Why don't I know about this?" "Because we were discussing it in private." Wesley smiled slightly. "Fortunately, my employer is willing to help you regain your footing, for example, assisting you in some missions that require additional services. Faith wants to take over my job." Before Wesley could finish speaking, Vladimir directly exposed their real purpose with red eyes. Mrs. Gao, Shin, Leland, Jin Bing, and their 2 Ross brothers, Vladimir and Anatoly. They are all gang leaders from Hell's Kitchen, but they did not conflict with each other. Instead, they chose to join forces to carry out criminal activities, each completing different tasks, so as to achieve non-conflict and uniform distribution of interests, protocol. And Vladimir and Anatoly are mainly responsible for the transportation. Wesley was right about one thing. Because of the 2 people, Vladimir and Anatoly were able to jointly manage more sites. Now that Anatoly is dead, the site left by him has temporarily become unmanaged, seriously affecting the common interests of their gang alliance. From Vladimir's point of view, Jin Bing just took a fancy to the territory left by his younger brother. What kind of nonsense assistance? He clearly wants to take over Anatoly's transportation work. This is undoubtedly trying to dig a piece of the Russian Ross gangster big meat. Wesley didn't deny it, and said with a smile, "This is only for the common interests of everyone, and it is good for both parties." "FK the benefits," Vladimir roared with anger on his face. "Faith K's appetite is really big enough, he actually wants to directly eat half of my territory. Get out, tell Faith K, this is impossible. Don't try to threaten me with information about those 2 attackers, I don't need his help to find those 2 damned guys." Wesley took out a white handkerchief and wiped the spit from Vladimir's face. "I hope you will seriously consider it. My employer is waiting for your reply." Boom. After a knock on the door, Wesley walked into the office. He looked at the huge figure at the desk, and reported respectfully, Vladimir did not agree, but his hatred for the 2 attackers is very deep. Under the bright light, there was a fat man nearly 2 meters tall, wearing a custom-made high-end suit. His figure was huge but not round. With that friendly face, people who don't know him will only think that he is a kind and ordinary businessman. And the same is true on the surface. He is Hell's Kitchen's famous philanthropist, Wilson Faith. He once donated a large sum of money for the construction of New York, and declared that he hoped to give New York the peace it never had. Ironically, however, the philanthropist has a secret identity. That is Jin Bin, the master of the underworld in Hell's Kitchen, who makes everyone fearful. The deepest desires always breed the most extreme hatred. On the contrary, the most extreme hatred can also cause deeper desires, and Vladimir is no exception. Kim pinned his broad back to Wesley. His eyes stared out of the window, overlooking the bustling New York below him like a king. Shaking the red wine in his hand, Jin Bin said lightly, "Sooner or later, Vladimir's hatred will pull him into the abyss. What we have to do now is to wait patiently, and then we don't need to talk to him again. Soon, he will take the initiative to ask us for help." His tone was very calm, but no one could question the weight of the words. Jin Bing was born in a gangster family in Hell's Kitchen. He was abused by his father when he was young. His scarred childhood made him even more eager for the right to life and death. Unimaginable efforts have been made. Jin Bing was able to walk to the end of the current criminal road because he broke through with bloody footprints one by one. Those who once questioned Jin Bing have already become one of the many corpses on the road. "I see." Wesley nodded, and a glimmer of light flashed through his glasses. "There is one more thing I need to report to you. It is about the two warehouse attackers. The people we sent secretly also chased them down. The other party seems to have a strong sense of anti-investigation. Is your identity confirmed?" Jin unconsciously touched the cuff button on his right hand. "After investigation, one of them is indeed a recently well-known criminal killer. Some people call him the Punisher, who hunts and kills criminals. There is no relevant record of his identity information. It may take a lot of time to determine his whereabouts." Quote, "As for the other attacker, his situation is quite special." Speaking of this, Wesley paused for a moment, as if he didn't know what to say next. "Go on." Sensing Jin Bin's displeasure, Wesley immediately said, "Our people have seen the face of that mercenary. It is said that he is an Asian, but their statements are a little different." Wesley's expression looked strange. Some people said that the man came from a distant Oriental country, some said he was a neon man, and a small group said he was the famous movie star Jack Chang. It sounded very positive. Quote. Hearing these words, even Jin Bing, a well-informed underworld boss, was a little speechless at the moment. Will Jack make a movie and become a mercenary? How face-blind is this to think it's the same person? Jin Bin was completely speechless. The office chair turned slowly. He looked at Wesley and asked, "As an employer, can't you know the identity of the employee?" Wesley shook his head. "I'm afraid not. The commission we issued was carried out on a dark web, and the information of both parties is completely confidential. The only thing that can be determined is that there is only one person who accepts the commission, and the Punisher should just appear there. It seems that the person who accepted the entrustment is not simple. Originally, he just wanted to find a completely innocent outsider to disrupt my transaction with the Russian Ross gang, and then use his hands to let the people we secretly arrange eliminate Anatoly and Ka Chi, and finally put everything on the murderer's head." Jin Bing spoke slowly, with an imperceptible surprise in his eyes. "Unexpectedly, this person has the ability to directly eliminate them, so that our people have no chance to make a move. What surprised me even more is that the people sent by Vladimir not only failed to intercept them, but died again. A large number of men. Yes, the employer of Lu Chuang's entrustment is the New York underworld king. It was also for this reason that Lu Chuang's commission went so smoothly. Not only did he know the exact location of the drug deal, but Anatoly and Kaki just completed the drug deal after he went to the place of the deal. Although Kaki has started working for him, Kim will not trust each other because of this. In other words, there are not many people who can be completely trusted by him. Only after the death of Kaki, the former leader of the drug trafficking organization, can Jin Bin annex Kaki's drug trafficking organization and completely turn the opponent's power into his own power, but Jin Bin wants more than that. Compared with this benefit, Jin Bing has a longer-term vision. What he really wants is the transportation job of the Russian Ross gang. As long as he takes over all the transportation jobs, his criminal career can expand again later, and the whole of New York will be no gangster power can compare with him. Jin is not afraid that his plan will be discovered by Vladimir. After all, his men and goods are really gone, and he has also issued a reward. Naturally, Vladimir will not suspect him as a victim. The anger accumulated by Vladimir will only be vented on the murderer who killed Anatoly in the end. When Vladimir kills the murderer, all the truth will be buried. This is all Jin Bin's plan. It can not only annex Kuch's drug trafficking organization, but also weaken the strength of the Russian Ross gang, and take the opportunity to force Vladimir to give up part of the transportation work, and finally put himself on the sidelines and wait for the development of the incident. This planning ability alone is enough to make people feel chilling. However, there is a huge amounts of loophole in this perfect plan. That is, the warehouse attacker didn't die instantly. Moreover, the other party also escaped from Vladimir's pursuit, and even the people they secretly arranged failed to take action to silence them. Jin was lost in thought, and no one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, Jin Bin said again, "Wesley, tell Vladimir the identity of the Punisher, let the Punisher restrain Vladimir, ensure the safety of the Punisher when necessary, and ensure that Vladimir cannot kill each other. Also, do everything possible to find the person who accepted our commission. Then kill him. Weasel, pour me a cappuccino." At Sister Margaret's bar, Lu Chuang, who was wearing glasses, sat at the bar and called out to the Weasel who was cleaning the glass. The Weasel looked up and noticed the change in Lu Chuang's appearance, so he couldn't help but wondered, "Are you short-sighted?" "No," Lu Chuang pushed his glasses and explained solemnly, "this is just my disguise." Weasel was speechless. "Do you think you are Superman? Wearing glasses is just a disguise. You don't believe my pretense." Lu Chuang was not happy, his perfect disguise was questioned. "Nonsense, if this kind of you can be called a disguise, isn't it a cosmetic surgery for a woman to put on makeup?" Weasel's voice was a little uncontrollable, and suddenly found the long-haired woman standing on the right side of the bar staring at him, and said embarrassingly, "Vanessa, this is just a metaphor, I have no ill will towards women." Vanessa. Lu Chuang turned his head and glanced at the long-haired woman, and it turned out that she was the girlfriend Wade had been thinking about all along. But the other party doesn't know that Wade is still alive, and Wade also hides and dare not meet her. Lu Chuang withdrew his gaze and looked at the Weasel confidently. "Since you don't believe me, how about we make a bet that my disguise is fine, and bet on my cappuccino." "Yes, but how do you prove it?" Weasel became interested. Lu Chuang looked around, and then saw a bearded man passing by. "Hey, Buck." The bearded man heard someone calling his name, and looked at Lu Chuang suspiciously. "Who are you? Do we know each other?" "It's me." Lu Chuang took off his glasses. "It turned out to be you, little guy, I almost didn't recognize it." Weasel. If he remembers correctly, Lu Chuang and the other party seemed to have known each other a few days ago. "How long has it been before you can't recognize him with glasses on?" "Well, I admit that this is a disguise, but I can't deny that Buck is indeed a little blind." The Weasel took out his precious coffee powder with some distress, and made a cup of cappuccino for Lu Chuang on the spot. Putting the coffee in front of Lu Chuang, the Weasel handed out a black card at the same time, jokingly said, "Now your popularity is very high, Mr. 15 million, even I can't help being moved." Lu Chuang picked up the black card and found that the content on it was actually about himself. Targets: the Punisher, and an unidentified Asian. Contents of the commission: 2 people once sabotaged the deal between the Scorpion organization and the Russian Ross gang. One of them is the Punisher of the criminal killer, and the other is unknown. Killing or capturing the 2 can get $15 million. Provide relevant information about the 2. Information, according to the degree of effectiveness to give a part of the reward. The information on this reward has just been updated. I didn't expect you to be related to the Punisher. As an information dealer, Weasel naturally knew the famous Punisher. It was an accident. Lu Chuang didn't expect that he hadn't been exposed, but Frank had been exposed in advance. In other words, now Frank is facing the threat of all the bounties alone, which is equivalent to standing at the center of the storm. You must know that the temptation of $15 million is very huge, and I don't know how many beasts will be attracted. Lu Chuang took a sip of coffee and asked, "Is the investigation out?" Weasel nodded. "You were right, there is indeed a problem with that entrustment. I went back and checked. The frozen warehouse was rented 2 weeks ago. It is probably a temporary trading place, except for the person in charge of the transaction that night people. Logically speaking, there should not be a few people who know this information in advance. So, my employer is one of the insiders." "Yes." Weasel scanned the bar and confirmed that no one was paying attention, then lowered his voice and said, "According to my guess, this employer is likely to be someone higher up." Lu Chuang frowned. "You mean the leader of Jinbing and Russia's Ross gang?" "I heard that the leader of the Ross gang in Russia is going crazy, searching the city for the whereabouts of the Punisher, but there seems to be no movement from Jinbing, but he sent someone to clean up the territory of his dead subordinate." In the end, it was obvious enough what the weasel meant. "Jin is my employer." Lu Chuang had an absurd look on his face. After going around and around, the person who offered him a reward in the end turned out to be his employer. "Definitely, this is just my guess. If this is the case, I advise you to try not to show your face. Jin is not a kind person. He has more means than you can imagine." Although Weasel knows that Lu Chuang is special and has the same self-healing ability as Wade, but his combat experience is pitiful, and he can deal with some gangsters. Coming to Lu Chuang, he didn't have the ability to resist at all. Lu Chuang pushed his glasses. "You have to trust my disguise." Weasel was speechless. How should I put it? Judging from the fact that there is no information about Lu Chuang in the bounty, his disguise is really well done. The weasel leaned back and returned to normal volume. "However, your commission is considered completed, a total of 100,000 United States dollars. Do you want to convert it into cash?" "No exchange." Lu Chuang drank the rest of the coffee in one gulp, and then took out a list from his pocket. "I want to buy the above items, the amount will be directly deducted from my salary." Weasel glanced at the list, and quickly saw the key points, which was very surprising. "Do you still modify guns?" "I understand a little." Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Man in American Comics. Start Regenerative Healing Factor. Chapter 31. The next day, Lu Chuang bought a batch of guns and tools from Weasel. He began to modify the firearms himself. Sure enough, when he started to modify the firearms, the super high school level sharpshooter's talent was activated again, and a sense of familiarity-like instinct emerged spontaneously. Without thinking, he could clearly distinguish the functions of firearm accessories, and at the same time, various values appeared in his head. With the assistance of a super high school level sharpshooter, Lu Chuang quickly transformed the first pistol. The power of this modified pistol is more than double that of ordinary pistols, but the recoil does not increase. Unlike Frank's modified Browning automatic pistol, although it is powerful, its recoil is also amazing. If it weren't for Frank's physical fitness far beyond ordinary people, he wouldn't be able to play with that modified pistol at all. Putting it outside, Lu Chuang's modified pistol is definitely a black technology product. However, Lu Chuang did not keep the pistol, but disassembled it and rebuilt it in another direction. With the increase in the number of transformations, Lu Chuang continued to tap the potential of a super high school level sharpshooter. His experience can be seen with the naked eye. The speed is improving rapidly, and the instinct for firearms has gradually turned into substantial experience. In just a few days, Lu Chuang has become an experienced firearms expert. Lu Chuang also has a new understanding of super high school level talents. Super high school level talent is by no means the kind of ability that is forced into the brain. It is more like an ability and instinct. Only through a lot of practice can these theories and skills be fully integrated, and there are huge amounts of potential waiting for Lu Chuang to tap. 5 days later, Lu Chuang came to an open field in the suburbs. Have to admit, America has an advantage. That is, there is no shortage of land at all, and there are enough open spaces. It is not easy to find a place without people. Lu Chuang looked around the empty field of vision, and after confirming that there was no one within 100 meters, he suddenly lowered his hands, and the 2 pistols were quickly sent to his hands with the propelling device built into his clothes. At the same time, Lu Chuang's pupils shrank suddenly. The body is constantly secreting adrenaline, and the brain is running rapidly to calculate, centering on its own body, using the prototype geometry as the plane reference, constructing a statistical model in his mind, and the trajectory angles and distances of all attack points are all in front of his eyes. Suddenly, Lu Chuang held guns with both hands and pointed to the left and right sides, and the muzzles of the guns erupted with flames. Bang 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 bang. The muffled gunshots sounded continuously, and it didn't sound like a pistol at all, but more like two submachine guns. With the sound of the gunshot, Lu Chuang kept turning his body in the rhythm of the shooting sound, and quickly swung his arms. This time it was not an arc trajectory, but a more direct attack method. If arc trajectory and bullet interception are weird and changeable skills, but the current attack method is extremely fast. Although the speed is fast, it is not messy, and Lu Chuang's movements are full of flowing beauty. When the last bullet was fired from the gun, Lu Chuang flipped his wrist, and the magazine fell according to gravity. The thruster device instantly ejected a new magazine and inserted it into the pistol. The bullet was ejected from the muzzle again, and the gunshot could not hear a single pause, a feeling of. After more than 10 seconds, Lu Chuang's pupils returned to normal file size, and he exited the bullet time. Panting slightly, he murmured, "Super high school level sharpshooter, it's really terrifying." This is the second time Lu Chuang has entered bullet time. In bullet time, Lu Chuang can perform complex calculations and analyses in a short period of time. Each bullet is shot through precise calculations, and the hit rate is infinitely close to 100%. Lu Chuang can easily shoot with just one bullet. Take away the life of the enemy, there is no need to fire a second shot. With the two pistols he personally modified, the power didn't increase much, but the shooting frequency was comparable to the speed of a submachine gun, and the lethality of the two pistols was at least twice as high. You know, people die when they are killed. Abandoning the enhancement of power, the threat to the enemy is even greater. Gunfighting technique plus firearm modification. This is the real way to open the super high school level sharpshooter. After finishing the test, Lu Chuang put the pistol back in his sleeve and walked home. Passing by a deserted construction site, Lu Chuang accidentally saw two figures, one big and one small, standing inside. They looked like father and daughter, with a distance between them. Before Lu Chuang could take a closer look, he saw the man who seemed to be his father suddenly raised a pistol and pointed it at the little loli. What the hell? Lu Chuang's pupils shrank suddenly, and the flow of time instantly slowed down. The pistol slipped from the sleeve, and then the arm swung suddenly, and a bullet arced in the air and shot between the two of them. Boom! In midair, two bullets collided and fell to the ground with a crisp sound. In the perspective of the father and daughter, the father shot at the little Lolita, and the little Lolita closed her eyes subconsciously. There was only a crisp sound, but the imagined pain did not appear. Little Lolita slowly opened her eyes, only to see her father standing there with a dull expression on his face. She wondered, "Big Daddy, what's the matter?" Her father didn't answer her, but stared at the two bullets on the ground dumbfounded. I saw two bullets merged into one at a 90-degree right angle, and one bullet pierced the other bullet horizontally. It looked like someone shot from the side, just hitting the bullet that was traveling in a straight line in midair. But the problem is that their left and right sides are covered with obstructions. Where did they come from? In broad daylight, a big man actually bullies a little girl. A voice suddenly came from behind. Big Daddy immediately turned around and saw Lu Chuang pointing a gun at his head. He fired that gun. Big Daddy was shocked in his heart. Although he couldn't believe it, the facts were right in front of his eyes. Someone really shot and intercepted his bullet, and the other person was actually standing behind him. How did this guy do it? Of Big Daddy. Seeing Daddy being pointed at the head, little Loli hurried over. Facing Lu Chuang with a gun, this little Loli, who looked only about 11 years old, showed no fear on her face, but a ferocity and fearlessness that did not match her age. She seemed to regard Lu Chuang as an enemy. The body assumes a combat-ready posture. "Mindy, stand behind me." Big Daddy stopped her movement, stretched out his hand to protect her behind him, and then used his body to block the muzzle of the gun. He stared at Lu Chuang intently. "Who are you and what do you want?" Seeing this scene, Lu Chuang frowned. "How can you feel that you have become a bad person for no reason when you are so brave?" Lu Chuang looked at Big Daddy and Mindy, and suddenly noticed that the little Loli named Mindy was wearing a small body armor, as if he had known in advance to shoot and took defensive measures. Are you really father and daughter? Big Daddy nodded with an ugly face, holding the pistol tightly in his right hand but didn't dare to lift it up. This person gave him an extremely dangerous feeling, as if the muzzle of the gun was locked on his head. No matter how he tried to avoid it, he couldn't escape. The most important thing is that Mindy is right behind him. Big Daddy can't gamble with Mindy's safety. Well, it looks like a misunderstanding. Under the watchful eyes of the two, Lu Chuang put down his pistol. I saw you shooting at this girl. I thought it was some kind of perverted killer, and you look quite similar. There was no threat of gunpoint, and Big Daddy finally breathed a sigh of relief. But when he heard the last sentence, his eyelids couldn't help twitching a few times. Why did he start to attack personally? Lu Chuang asked curiously, so what are you doing? We're training. Before the Big Daddy opened his mouth, little Lori Mindy replied in a childish voice, looking at Lu Chuang with glowing eyes. How did you do it just now, intercepting bullets with bullets? Oh my god, this is so cool. You won't be the kind of superhero in the comics, will you? Lu Chuang cheerfully said, I want to learn, I'll teach you. Yeah, ahem. Big Daddy coughed and interrupted their conversation. He grabbed Mindy's little hand and said to Lu Chuang, sorry, we still have things to do, my daughter and I won't bother you. Ignoring Mindy's 2 or 3 steps to turn around, Big Daddy led her away from the scene quickly. Lu Chuang didn't stop them because he had already guessed the identities of these 2 people. Killer Girl and Big Daddy in Kick-Ass. An anti-hero like the Punisher is also a ruthless person who never stays behind the villain. Don't look at the cute little Lolita, but it's bloody and violent when she starts her hands, and it's all because of her father's childhood. It is comparable to the iron-blooded training of Sparta. After the 2 left, Lu Chuang put away the pistol, hummed a little song and walked home. In the next few days, Lu Chuang made some new things. Although the 2 pistols have been used very smoothly, Lu Chuang feels that they are still far from enough. After all, the world he lives in is the Marvel world full of disasters, and ordinary pistols may not be able to kill some enemies. Originally, Lu Chuang planned to try to transform a sniper rifle, or even a bazooka full of human truths. As a result, he found that the prices of those gadgets were very expensive, and it was simply not something he, a poor man, could afford. Ever since, Lu Chuang changed his thinking. Since you can't afford to play with firearms, then don't modify them. You know, the way to improve firepower is not just to modify firearms. Non-lethal weapons such as bullets, grenades, or flashbangs can enhance his combat effectiveness. Lu Chuang may not have enough money for high-level firearms and weapons, but he can still afford ammunition and the like. Then Lu Chuang tried to modify it, and it turned out to be a success. Lu Chuang was instantly excited when he discovered this. Think about Hawkeye from Avengers. He is also proficient in archery. Why can he become a member of Avengers? Is it because he is messy enough? Well, it is true that this possibility cannot be ruled out. But it is undeniable that Hawkeye's arrows with various effects, combined with his super archery, are also very powerful. Doesn't it mean that Loki, the King of Kings, was completely reduced after receiving one of his arrows? Is it a funny character? Thinking of this, Lu Chuang was suddenly inspired, and started to modify the ammunition. It is the most common idea to increase the power of the grenade. As far as Lu Chuang knew, there were quite a few people who could withstand the damage of the grenade, and the most they could do to increase the power was just to help the other party scrape the patient's body. Therefore, Lu Chuang's transformation plan has only one goal. Even if you can't hurt the opponent, you have to consume the opponent's combat power. For example, put a lot of chili water into the smoke bomb, transform the flash bomb into colorful strong light. Although these things may hurt him by mistake, but Lu Chuang has self-healing ability, it will be a big deal to see who can have the last laugh. Looking at the gunpowder in the room, Lu Chuang shook his head. It still feels like it's not enough, and the money is almost spent. It seems that we have to find a weasel to take over the commission. Lu Chuang went to the open space again to test the power of the newly made ammunition. And the final result made him very satisfied. Passing through the abandoned construction site, the father and daughter still didn't show up. Anyway, Lu Chuang didn't think it was because of himself. After all, he looked so kind. In other words, why do I always meet anti-heroes? Be it Wade, Frank, Mindy or Big Daddy, none of them are good. Lu Chuang has a feeling that a little sheep has fallen into the pack of wolves. If this continues, it will be difficult to guarantee that his kind little cat will not be affected by these good people. Back in Brooklyn, Lu Chuang happened to pass by a restaurant and walked in without having dinner. During this period of time, he was busy with various things, so he ate all kinds of fast food. To be honest, the fast food in America is really cheap. Not only is the portion large but also the price is cheap. This is also the reason why some poor people are keen to eat these high-calorie foods. Fast food will lead to the emergence of so many overweight obese people. Although Lu Chuang is not afraid of these high-calorie fast food, but he is about to throw up, and now he has time, he plans to change his taste. Walking into the restaurant, Lu Chuang found that the restaurant was almost full of people. At this time, a waiter came over and asked with a smile, "How many sirs are you?" "1. Sorry sir, we may not have enough seats." The waiter apologized professionally. "However, if you don't mind, you can share a table with other customers." Yes, Lu Chuang didn't care, it didn't matter where to eat or not. The waiter walked away but came back quickly. "There are 2 guests who have agreed to share the table, sir, please follow me." Lu Chuang followed the waiter into the restaurant and stopped near the corner. Lu Chuang looked at the seat and found that there were 2 young men. One was a fat man with slightly curly hair, the other was a man wearing sunglasses, and beside him was a blind man with a guide stick. Sitting opposite the 2, Lu Chuang suddenly felt a little uncomfortable, but he didn't care, thinking it was just affected by the environment of the restaurant. He took the menu from the waiter, and ordered 2 main dishes that looked good. "Just hold a glass of water and wait." At this time, the curly-haired fat man said enthusiastically, "It seems that we are not lonely tonight." If someone is willing to compete with him, Lu Chuang will naturally not pretend to be arrogant and slap him in the face. He laughed and said, "There are at least 2 of you, and you can go to the internet cafe to play hackers, so I can only play solo." The curly-haired fat man didn't seem to be able to understand this meaning. He smiled and did not respond, but took out a business card and handed it to Lu Chuang. "My name is Fudge Nelson, and this is my colleague Matt Murdoch. We are lawyers at the Nelson Murdoch law firm. We have been in the industry for a short time and are actively looking for new clients. If you need the help of a lawyer, we are happy to serve you." Fudge introduced with a smile, then looked at his silent companion beside him, and asked in a puzzled tone, "Hey, Matt, why didn't you talk all of a sudden?" Lu Chuang took the business card and looked at it, and couldn't help but look up at the blind man named Matt. "Isn't this a coincidence? Just worried that I would be influenced by great benefactors, a superhero suddenly appeared. Some people are blind on the surface, but they are actually superheroes. In the future, they will join a group of heroes. Although they cannot see, they have supersensory abilities and superb fighting skills. Boxing and kicking are the same. Have to. Yes, he is the famous blind monk Li Ching. People from the rivers and lakes gave him the nickname, Daredevil." No wonder Lu Chuang felt a little strange when he just sat down. Judging from Matt's reaction, it is estimated that his keen sense of smell smelled the residual gunpowder smoke on his body, which aroused his vigilance, and he was observing himself with his supersensory ability. Lu Chuang felt a sudden chill. Although the other party couldn't see anything, how could he stand up to being observed by a big man in all directions? Bullet time, start, Matt Murdoch, courtesy name Li Ching. This evening, Matt and Fudge came to this restaurant on Fudge's recommendation to celebrate their new law firm. As a result, when they were halfway through eating, the waiter suddenly came over and asked if they could share a table with a customer. As a superhero, Matt is naturally happy to help strangers with this little favor. However, when the other party approached them, Matt smelled a lot of gunpowder smoke remaining on the other party's body with an extraordinary sense of smell, as if he had experienced a gun battle not long ago. Fortunately, there was no smell of blood, and Matt's vigilance could not help but drop a little. Matt could feel that this person's identity was not simple. With a skeptical attitude, he began to observe the stranger in front of him. Definitely, he did not use his eyes to observe, but relied on his supersensory ability to collect information about the other party. Want to judge the identity of the other party? Through super hearing, Matt can hear the heartbeat of the other party very fast. Matt could tell that it wasn't a frequency of emotional stress, but more of a sign of good health. As Matt continued to listen, though, he felt more and more that something was wrong. This heartbeat seems to be faster. No, it's getting faster and faster. This heartbeat rate is almost 200 times per minute, and the heartbeat is still accelerating. After a while, Matt's eyes widened, and his heart rate exceeded 300 beats per minute. This is a heart problem. Just when Matt was so frightened that he wanted to remind him, he heard his heart rate suddenly slow down again, and then eased. Matt froze. What's going on? Matt is not an expert in medical matters, so he couldn't figure out what was going on with this strange heart rate. Boom boom boom. Suddenly, the heart rate reached 400 per minute. Matt almost stood up. Boom, boom. In less than half a second, the heart rate suddenly dropped again. Matt's face turned pale slightly, and the heartbeat frequency made his heartbeat dance along with it. Before Matt's heart eased up, the weird heartbeat rate increased again. For the next half minute, Matt listened to the heart rate rise and fall, until it settled into a rough rhythm. Matt clutched his heart, as if listening to an exciting music feast. His expression was dull, and he murmured in disbelief. Quote. Symphony of Destiny. At the same time, Lu Chuang was also holding his heart with a pale face. This is the first time he has repeatedly turned on the bullet time so frequently, which makes his heart beat out of the rhythm of the Symphony of Fate. If it were someone else playing like this, they wouldn't need their heart, probably their souls would be singing the Symphony of Fate. However, even Lu Chuang's self-healing ability can't stand it. Lu Chuang, who was not weak in his life, gritted his teeth, smiled complacently, and looked at Matt's gradually distorted face. Let you peek. If I don't scare you out of your psychological shadow, it's my heart not beating fast enough. Fudge was in a daze the whole time. He felt that the wind was a bit cold tonight, and he felt like an outsider. Seeing Lu Chuang and Matt looking at each other, and then covering their hearts at the same time, their faces became more and more strange, as if they were making silent eye contact. Fudge felt that he could not participate in their world at all. But the question is, aren't you blind, Matt? Where's the eye contact? When the Symphony of Destiny was halfway through, Matt finally couldn't help it, restrained his sensory ability, gave up observing Lu Chuang. The beating of this heart is really too penetrating, listening to his heart beating along with it. Matt forced a smile and nodded. Hi, I'm Matt Murdoch. The uncomfortable feeling disappeared, and Lu Chuang also canceled the bullet time, and said with a smile, Hello, Lawyer Murdoch, I am Lu Chuang. Seeing the two of them clutching their hearts, they introduced themselves with pale faces. If Fudge hadn't witnessed the whole process, he would have thought it was two heart patients communicating about their condition. Feeling that the weird atmosphere gradually became harmonious, Fudge said, Our law firm is on 46th Street in West Midtown. If you need legal advice, you can come to us. West Midtown, also known as Hell's Kitchen. Due to the reputation of Hell's Kitchen, which is famous for its messy and backward living quality, serious ethnic conflicts and high crime rate, local residents usually use the more normal-sounding name of West Midtown, especially Fudge, who runs a law firm. So, I'm afraid the reputation of Hell's Kitchen will scare away customers. Lu Chuang took a sip of water. Speaking of legal advice, I do have a question that has puzzled me for many years. Hearing Lu Chuang's words, Fudge suddenly became interested. Before he could ask, Matt asked first, What's the question? Since the perception ability cannot be used to judge, then use the simplest way to set out the identity of the other party. Lu Chuang said with a serious look, It's like this. If there is a hamburger restaurant that is very popular, and there is a fast food restaurant opposite this hamburger restaurant, but because the business of this hamburger restaurant is too hot, the fast food restaurant has no business, so fast food restaurant owners have been trying to make a fortune stealing hamburger recipes. However, the plan of the fast food restaurant owner did not succeed, because every time he stole the secret recipe of the burger, he would be driven out by the owner of the burger restaurant and the chef in various ways, which caused the fast food restaurant owner to suffer mentally and physically damage. As the burger shop owner and chef breaking the law. Fudge was taken aback for a moment. Why does this story sound familiar? Matt didn't think too much, but thought about it from a lawyer's point of view, and replied, It's not breaking the law, the behavior of the two people in the burger restaurant is justified, and it's a measure taken to protect their legal rights. The behavior of the owner of the fast food restaurant is burglary, and if relevant clues can be provided, the owner of the burger restaurant can sue the owner of the fast food restaurant. Lu Chuang nodded. I see, then I would like to thank you for the owner of the burger shop. Quote. I have a question. Is the burger restaurant you mentioned called Haziba, and the owner is called Crab Boss? Fudge looked a little weird, but Matt didn't notice it. His expression changes. Matt asked in a puzzled tone, Fudge, do you know this burger restaurant? How should I put it, Matt, you don't often watch TV. In fact, that burger restaurant is quite famous all over the world. So powerful, why didn't I know there was this burger shop? Recalling all the burger restaurants he knew, Matt still couldn't find a suitable one. Seeing that Matt still didn't understand, Fudge said helplessly, you may not know this burger restaurant, but there is an employee in it whose name you should have heard of. What is his name? SpongeBob SquarePants. Matt. Lu Chuang clapped his hands and praised. As expected of Mr. Murdoch, he immediately answered this question that has puzzled me since I was a child. What kind of nonsense did you think about when you were a kid? Matt was a little speechless. He felt that this man had an unscrupulous breath in his whole body and heart. In order to thank you for your help, let me treat this meal. Without giving the two of them time to refuse, Lu Chuang beckoned the waiter over. Their table will be charged to my account. Give money. Good sir. Generous Lu, I offer you a toast. Fudge immediately picked up the drink in his hand to express his gratitude. He didn't care what questions the other party asked, and he still liked customers who were generous. After hearing this, Matt had to raise his drink. Thank you for this dinner. Lu Chuang raised his water glass. It's easy to say, I may still have some legal issues to consult in the future, and then I will trouble Lawyer Nelson and Lawyer Murdoch. The so-called going out, many friends and many roads. Being able to be friends with Night Demon Blind Monk Shaw, at least the path of jungler must be stable. Hearing Lu Chuang's words, Fudge's attitude became more enthusiastic. He left Matt and chatted with Lu Chuang. From SpongeBob SquarePants, who seemed most interested in the other party, to the safety impact of the Pacific Rim volcanic earthquake zone on America's surrounding environment. Lu Chuang can also answer anything, whether he understands it or not, as long as he can answer it. Listening to the two chatting, Matt couldn't speak at all. I just feel that the wind is a bit cold tonight, and I feel like an outsider. After leaving the restaurant, it was already 10 o'clock in the evening. After Lu Chuang said goodbye to Matt and Fudge, he walked to Sister Margaret's bar. Walking into the dark alley, at a distance of about 20 meters, Lu Chuang suddenly saw two figures coming out from the door of the bar, and then left to the other end of the alley. Why does this back look familiar? Lu Chuang looked at the two leaving figures and walked towards Sister Margaret's bar while pondering. When Lu Chuang walked into the bar, he found that there seemed to be something wrong with the atmosphere in the bar. Different from the harmonious atmosphere of drinking and fighting in the past, the at the moment bar was very quiet, only some whispering voices were discussing something. Lu Chuang noticed that some mercenaries were holding pistols in their hands, which was not in line with Margreta's safe behavior rules at the nuns' bar. Lu Chuang didn't bother to think about it, so he went straight to the weasel at the bar. What happened here? You came just in time, we are in big trouble. Seeing Lu Chuang's appearance, Weasel said with a serious expression, to be precise, you and Wade are in serious trouble. The Francis you mentioned earlier brought a female version of the Terminator to the door just now, and wanted to inquire about Wade's situation. Whereabouts? It looks like they already know that Wade is still alive. It turned out to be them. Lu Chuang narrowed his eyes. No wonder the back looks so familiar. It turned out to be the Sema face of Francis, and the other one should be the female mutant named Gina. Weasel said, thanks to my old buddies, they didn't dare to do anything casually here, but they took away the previous photo of Wade and Vanessa. Behind the bar are all photos of mercenaries. These are the photos of dead mercenaries. In memory of them, Wade, who was suffering from cancer, also left photos. Their target is Vanessa, Lu Chuang said without hesitation. It's not hard to think of using Wade's most important person to lure him out. Weasel nodded in agreement. I thought so too, so I notified Wade, and now he has gone to find Vanessa. I hope everything you still have time. Lu Chuang didn't speak, he was trying to recall the plot of the movie. Weasel, have you heard of the X-Men? X-Men. Weasel didn't understand why Lu Chuang asked this suddenly, but he still thought about it seriously. I seem to have heard this name before. It is said that it is a mutant organization dedicated to peace, and its main activities were from the 1960s to the 1990s. It's long since disappeared. Maybe it's just a myth made up by those mutants. Why are you asking this all of a sudden? Do you still expect the X-Men to help you two fake mutants? The ground squirrel thought that Lu Chuang and Wade were both transformed mutants. Yeah, Lu Chuang's face was full of worry. In fact, he has already discovered that although there are mutants in this world, there is no news about X-Men, as if this organization does not exist in the world. Is it dead or alive? Then the question arises, without the existence of X-Men, the two important supporting roles in the Deadpool movie, Colossus and Warhead in X-Men, will not appear. Can Wade find a suitable helper to deal with Francis? After a while, the Weasel suddenly received a call. Seeing the caller ID, Weasel gestured to Lu Chuang for the screen and found that it was Wade calling. When the phone was connected, I heard Wade snarl, "FK. FK. That bastard took Vanessa. Prepare a weapon for me. I'm going to FK that bastard right now." Weasel secretly thought it was bad, and hurriedly advised, "Wade, calm down, let's find a place to talk." "I'm calm, I'm F-King calm now." Wade's voice was full of anger and mania, and he yelled at the phone, "Gather at your house." With the crisp ringing of the bar, the signal on the other end of the phone was disconnected. Weasel's face changed slightly. Damn it. Wade doesn't have the key to my house, so that guy is trying to smash my house, right? Relax, you know Wade, at best, blow up your house. Lu Chuang comforted. Weasel, let's go. If we don't go, it will be too late. The Weasel hurriedly found someone to look after the bar, and rushed out of the gate with Lu Chuang. Lu Chuang seemed to have thought of something, turned around and ran in another direction. "I'll go home to pick up some things, send your address to my phone, and I'll be there later." Calm down, Wade, you must be calm. In a certain room, the Weasel persuaded Wade earnestly, and the door behind him was broken into several pieces. "Get me a weapon. I want it all." Wade smashed the wall with a punch, and the broken phalanx healed quickly. "All right, I see. Weasels don't dare pour oil on Rage's Wade's head, or his house will be gone." While the Weasel was collecting weapons, Lu Chuang walked in through the broken door, and saw that he was carrying a huge amounts of traveling bag on his back. "Yo, Wade, long time no see." Lu Chuang looked at Wade and said hello. Anxiety was visible to the naked eye on Wade's face, and he said very fast, "Little guy, this is not the time for a party. Francis's damn dish soap took Vanessa, and it's time for me to pay him. It's time to liquidate." "I know, so I'm here to help." Wade looked at Lu Chuang's travel bag. "Hey, I think you may have made a mistake. This is not a field trip. Are you going to invite Francis to have a picnic with you, and then poison him?" "Definitely not. These are my gear." Knowing that Wade didn't believe it, Lu Chuang simply opened the travel bag, poured out a large pile of guns and ammunition, and finally piled up into a hill. After doing all this, Lu Chuang said regretfully, "I know this equipment may not be enough, but the money I have saved for so long is only about 200,000 yuan, and I can only buy so much." "Wade, Weasel with several guns. Are you going to fight on the battlefield? As a mercenary, it's reasonable to have more weapons. Are you sure it's just a little more?" Weasel swallowed. He knew that Lu Chuang had a large amount of ammunition, but he didn't expect him to bring them all. Lu Chuang said, "You have to know that our opponent this time is mutant. We must not be negligent. These are good things that have been modified by me, and they can be used to deal with Francis and the others." Hearing his words, the Weasel picked up a pistol, and held it in his hand to examine it carefully. "Isn't this just an ordinary M9 pistol? What's so special?" Lu Chuang grinned and said proudly, "The most special thing about this pistol is that it has a fingerprint unlocking function. Only my fingerprint can be used to shoot. If the recognition is wrong." "What happens if the recognition is wrong?" Weasel asked curiously. "It will explode in place." "Weasel, why didn't you say it earlier?" Seeing the Weasel's face turn pale, Lu Chuang explained, "I haven't had time to activate the function of this pistol, and it won't explode yet." The Weasel immediately breathed a sigh of relief, and hurriedly returned the pistol to Lu Chuang, not daring to touch this pile of things again. Who knows what kind of weird weapons there will be in it. Wade looked at the pile of guns and ammunition, obviously misunderstood something, and thanked Lu Chuang. You are still a good friend, you are indeed a bed friend who has slept together for more than 2 months. I will accept these friendship donations of yours. Get off. When the time comes when I blow that dish soap's head off, I will be the first to engrave your name on his tombstone. You think too much, these are all my property, how could I give it to you for nothing? After some operations, Lu Chuang successfully activated the gun in his hand. I mean, I will go with you to deal with Francis. Wade was stunned and looked at Lu Chuang. I know you have done a lot of things recently, but what we have to face is a group of professional armed soldiers and a female tyrannosaur who can withstand bullets. These people are not guns. More can be solved. Lu Chuang didn't answer, the fact is the best proof. Boom! Lu Chuang swung his arm violently, and a bullet escaped. Before the weasel could react, the bullet arced around him and hit the flying dart's target on the rear gun. Wardfack. The weasel saw Lu Chuang shoot at him suddenly, so frightened that he subconsciously closed his eyes. But the expected pain did not hit. The weasel opened his eyes and found himself standing still intact. He panicked and said, I'm not dead. Obviously I heard gunshots. Wade looked at the hole in the flying dart's target, and said with an exaggerated expression, I think I'm hallucinating, the bullet can actually turn. I guarantee that Newton will definitely jump out of the coffin when he sees this scene. What is the principle of this? How did you do it? Lu Chuang explained. The principle is very simple, that is, the moment the bullet is ejected from the chamber, the shooter shakes his wrist rapidly to give the bullet a horizontal acceleration, thus forming an arc. This is the gun-fighting technique. To demonstrate, Lu Chuang swung his arm again and shot an arc-shaped bullet at the weasel. Weasel, there is a person who can self-healing next door, why do you have to take me, an ordinary person, as a target? Very good, you are hired. Wade happened to be in urgent need of helpers. Seeing that Lu Chuang was so awesome, he didn't care where the other party learned new skills, so he nodded and agreed to his joining. Just then, Wade's cell phone vibrated suddenly. That dish soap sent a message. Wade looked at the content on the phone, and said angrily, Vanessa is in his hands, and he wants me to go to the waste recycling station at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. This shit, doesn't he know it's not good to take a taxi at this time? Quote. Weasel said. It seems that they have made preparations in advance, waiting for you to fall into the trap. Without further ado, Lu Chuang grabbed the guns and ammunition on the ground and began to arm himself, confidently saying, with the 3 of us, Francis is nothing to worry about. 3 people, Weasel asked suspiciously, do you 2 still have helpers? You don't think of yourself as a human. Lu Chuang had a surprised expression, as if he had heard something incredible. Weasel's face darkened. Do you have any misunderstandings about me? I am a logistician, not a combatant. 10 minutes later, Lu Chuang reappears in full armor, standing in front of the weasel. I saw him wearing tactical equipment, with a large caliber revolver in the left and right holsters, a 12 caliber shotgun behind him, 2 rows of various ammunition crossed on his chest, and there were magazines one by one, and the back waist pack is full of large caliber ammunition bullets. Seeing this exaggerated attire, Weasel complained, is this equipment too much? You can never have too much firepower. As he said that, Lu Chuang seemed not very satisfied. He grabbed 2 grenades and stuffed them into his trouser pockets. Quote. The corner of the weasel's mouth twitched as he watched. Wouldn't he panic with so many ammunition on his body? Compared to Lu Chuang, Wade looks much cooler. He wears a black and red tight uniform, a red mask with panda eyes on his face, and 2 katana pinned behind him. Among other things, he looks quite relaxed, unlike Lu Chuang. Lu Chuang felt uncomfortable walking like that. Wade looked at Lu Chuang's outfit, then looked at his own, and exclaimed, we will definitely be the best combination. We should give ourselves a combination name. What do you think of the Deadpool alliance? Not so good. Lu Chuang looked disgusted, and then offered his suggestion. Anyway, we both have similar abilities, so we'll call them the Immortal Duo. As long as we don't take off our clothes, this wave will definitely be stable. Undead Duo. This name is straightforward enough. I like it, so I will call it this. The location of the waste recycling station is a little far away, and you need to take a car to go there. For the 2 people in full armor, ordinary taxis are definitely useless. Maybe the driver will take them directly to the gate of the New York Police Department. Fortunately, Wade quickly called a taxi from an acquaintance. The driver was an Indian boy. When he saw Lu Chuang covered in ammunition and Wade was carrying a large bag of weapons, he just asked them what they were doing out of curiosity. He didn't see what normal people should have. Panic and scared. Sure enough, no normal person can play with Wade. Lu Chuang felt that as the only normal person among them, the pressure on him was enormous. Here, the Indian brother and Wade were chatting happily, and the Indian brother said vigorously, "Mr. Deadpool, you were right before, you need to control your own destiny. To be the master of your destiny, you have as much freedom as you want. Nobody can order me." Lu Chuang looked at the map, turn left ahead and stop. Indian brother. Okay sir. The taxi stopped at the corner, and Lu Chuang and Wade got out of the car. From a distance, I saw the huge amounts of abandoned ship at the waste recycling station. You forgot to take your equipment gift bag. Lu Chuang glanced at the taxi and reminded Wade. Damn it. Wade quickly got his weapon bag from the taxi. He was almost fighting with 2 katanas. This guy is really unreliable. Lu Chuang curled his lips, took out his binoculars and looked at the waste recycling station. It was full of various piles of waste, but he couldn't see any figure, nor did he see Vanessa, the hostage. He made it clear that there was an ambush here. As for the deck of the abandoned ship, it was too high, and it was difficult to see the situation on it clearly. Wade, what is our plan? Lu Chuang asked. Wade grabbed 2 submachine guns. Go straight in, kill all the villains like a superhero, and then save the heroine Vanessa. In the eyes of the supporting role, the hero and heroine finally kissed passionately together. Lu Chuang shyly said, "This is not good, after all Vanessa is your girlfriend, let me kiss her." Fart, the leading actor is definitely me. Because things happened so suddenly, the two really didn't have any time to arrange plans. Lu Chuang thought for a while, we can't just rush in like this. Hey, you've come here, don't you want to back down? I mean you can't rush forward, your girlfriend is still in their hands, if they threaten us with your girlfriend, we will be very passive. Lu Chuang analyzed from his own point of view. For example, ask us to take off the equipment, otherwise they will cut off your girlfriend's limbs. Threatening to chop off our own limbs or else. Fact, stop talking. At this moment, Wade felt that Lu Chuang was more like an evil villain, and said in a panic, "Dude, I don't think they think as deeply as you do, but you're right, we can't just rush in, we have to find Vanessa first. So, my plan is to sneak in secretly, and then rescue Vanessa without anyone noticing, kill Francis by the way, and finally go back to each house and find each mother." That's a good proposal. After the two reached an agreement, they found a secret corner and sneaked into the waste recycling station over the wall. Ignoring the ground at the best ambush point, the two sneaked directly to the ship from the rear. When Lu Chuang and Wade sneaked into the main body of the ship, as expected, several armed soldiers appeared in their field of vision, guarding the stairway leading to the deck, and they had to pass through them if they wanted to go up. A few minutes ago, Wade would have taken both guns and charged straight up. But now, he felt that he should be more stable. Wade said in a low voice, "There are 5 people in total, I'll get rid of the 3 on the left, and leave the remaining 2 on the right to you. Don't bother." Lu Chuang took out a small pistol from his back waist. Turn on the bullet time, instantly lock the positions of the 5 armed soldiers, pull the trigger and fire 5 shots in a row. Bew bew bew. Accompanied by a gunshot that couldn't be louder, 5 armed soldiers fell to the ground. Wade went closer to check and found that the 5 people had a tiny anesthetic needle inserted in their necks, but they didn't know why they were all foaming at the mouth and their bodies were twitching non-stop. What's this? Wade couldn't help asking. The anesthetic mixed with toxins ensures that they will die peacefully without any pain during the process, so I named this gun the Gun of Kindness. Lu Chuang explained his idea. The Gun of Kindness. Wade watched the armed soldiers' eyes widen. It was obvious that they were not unconscious, they were just unable to move due to anesthesia. Therefore, they can only watch the toxin injected into their bodies, and the body gradually reacts until the toxin completely spreads throughout the body, and finally dies without a single complaint. As you can see, there is no pain at all. After all, they are speechless, and only they know whether it hurts or not. Without the obstruction of armed soldiers, the two arrived on the deck smoothly, and saw a large group of armed soldiers gathered not far away, among them were the figures of Francis and Gina, and at the end of them, Vanessa was trapped in the oxygen chamber that had been used to torture Wade. Oh, they're here. The process was so smooth that Wade couldn't help but get excited. Although the scene is not very exciting, I think I have fallen in love with this assassin style. What should we do next? Whether to have a perfect assassination operation, or to have a perfect assassination operation. Human perceivable rescue operations. Unexpectedly, Lu Chuang stood up suddenly, quickly took out a few grenades and threw them over, yelling, "Assassinate a fart, such a good opportunity, definitely want to blow him up." Seeing this group of armed soldiers piled up together, Lu Chuang couldn't bear it at that time. At the moment, when is it not going to explode? It's like a passing jungler saw two waves of soldiers under the tower, who can resist such a temptation? Boom boom boom. A few grenades fell precisely under the feet of the armed soldiers, and dense explosions rang out. Francis and Gina were still waiting for Wade to arrive, but they were knocked to the ground by a sudden explosion. Since their positions were relatively close to Vanessa, and the grenade thrown by Lu Chuang deliberately avoided Vanessa, they were not affected by the explosion too much. When Francis and Gina came back to their senses, the ground was full of corpses and wreckage of armed soldiers, and the seriously injured armed soldiers were screaming and wailing. Only some of the armed soldiers standing outside escaped the explosion attack. And directly in front of them are the figures of Lu Chuang and Wade. "It's you." Francis was shocked by the appearance of Lu Chuang. In his opinion, the other party should have died in that fire long ago, and his body was buried at the bottom of the research institute. Francis quickly thought of something, and showed his iconic Sema face. "It seems that you, like that Joker, have activated the mutant gene in your body. I'm curious, what is your mutant ability?" Boom. Lu Chuang didn't beep with him anymore. He had a pistol in his hand at some point, and he swung his arm to pull the trigger. Wade also raised two submachine guns to shoot at the positions of the two, and shouted, "Eat shit, you hanger, watch our undead duo blow you up." The moment they raised their guns, Gina stood up and stood in front of Francis. The submachine gun bullets hit her without causing any actual damage. However, a bullet directly bypassed her and shot towards Francis in the rear. Francis's back suddenly felt cold, and with his reaction ability beyond ordinary people, he raised the tactical axe in his hand in time to block the bullet. A rounded bullet. Francis was startled, thinking that this was done by Lu Chuang through the mutant ability. Having personally experienced the danger of this kind of marksmanship, he immediately ordered, "Gina, don't worry about that Joker, get rid of this troublesome Asian, and don't give him a chance to shoot." Clear. Gina fixed her eyes on Lu Chuang, and her figure suddenly exploded, like a tank charging straight at Lu Chuang. "Little guy, this female Tyrannosaurus will be handed over to you." Wade took 2 steps back very shamelessly, and decisively gave way. Facing the rushing Gina, Lu Chuang's heart rate soared. With the secretion of adrenaline in the body, Lu Chuang's body functions also began to improve, and the equipment all over his body was no longer a burden. The moment Gina bumped into him, he quickly dodged sideways, and his speed increased by at least 2 times, more than double. Lu Chuang put the pistol back into his sleeve and replaced it with 2 revolvers in the left and right holsters. Bang, bang. Huge amounts of recoil came, and 2 large caliber bullets shot at Gina's head. Gina's head just shook slightly, obviously the bullet's damage to her was still limited. Gina turned around unhurriedly. She remembered that the person in front of her was directly maimed by her punch in the research institute. Although she didn't know why the other person's injury recovered so quickly, for her, this kind of play gun opponents pose no threat at all. You know, her skin is not afraid of bullets. Unless it is bombed by heavy weapons, it is very difficult to hurt her steel body. It is a joke to use a gun to deal with her. Gina looked at Lu Chuang playfully, and said with a sneer, "Hee hee, little guy, is that what you're capable of? If it's just like this, then you can die. Let me see if you can survive this time, come down." Strange yin and yang. Lu Chuang narrowed his eyes, raised the revolver and pulled the trigger again. Facing the black muzzle of the gun, Gina didn't care, and walked towards Lu Chuang with a smile, without even moving to dodge. Similarly, this time the bullet still hit her head. Gina just instinctively blocked her eyes and let the bullets shoot over. Who knows? The moment the 2 bullets touched her, the bullets suddenly exploded and turned into two balls of flames, directly enveloping her entire head. On the other side, Francis and Wade started a fierce duel at the same time, and there were still remnants of armed soldiers attacking Wade, trying to suppress Wade with fierce firepower. Wade smiled strangely and raised his submachine gun to shoot Francis, but suddenly the barrel of the gun clicked several times. Wade looked at the submachine gun suspiciously, but found that it was out of bullets, and shrugged embarrassedly at everyone. It's embarrassing. Regardless of the funny Wade, Francis found the right time to strike him with an axe. Wade let out a strange cry, and was instantly smashed into a sieve by the surging bullets. Looking at the fast self-healing muzzle on Wade, Francis raised the corner of his mouth and said, "I have to admit, I may have underestimated your ability before. The self-healing ability that can be resurrected from the dead reminds me of a mutant. Your self-healing ability is very similar to his. Moreover, it also has huge amounts of research value." There was greed in Francis's eyes. If he had known that Wade's self-healing ability was so powerful, he would not have thrown Wade in that research institute. He wanted to study the other's body more than sell it for a good price. As long as you unlock the secret of self-healing ability, its value can be imagined. Wade pulled out two katanas, and said fiercely, "Trust me, I will cut your head open later, and study whether your stupid head is filled with brains or shit." Just when they were about to make a move, they suddenly heard a piercing scream. That's from Gina. Gina, who was showing off her power just now. At the moment, she frantically slapped her fiery head, and a piercing scream burst out of her mouth. Those who hear it are sad, and those who hear it cry. Francis was shocked, and quickly looked at Gina's position. Could it be that person could hurt Gina? With Gina's ability, it was hard for Francis to imagine what kind of pain Gina, a strong woman like a bull, had suffered to make such a girlish scream. Gina screamed and finally extinguished the flame on her head. Obviously, the flames still couldn't break through her steel skin, that is to say, her face was smoky like a black man. If you want to say that the most eye-catching thing is her black hair with big back. Obviously, Gina's hair has not been strengthened. The flame can't damage her face, but it can damage her hair. After the continuous baptism of the flame, the hair on the top of her forehead is completely fuzzy, exuding a smell similar to burnt feathers. The smell, the hairline moved back nearly 10 centimeters. In the eyes of others, Gina's hair is like a half-worn wig, revealing a shiny forehead. Just pretty bald. Gina touched her forehead in disbelief, as if she couldn't accept this fact. Puff. Seeing Gina's new hairstyle, Lu Chuang couldn't hold back and laughed out loud. Under Gina's cannibalistic gaze, he waved his hand embarrassedly. "Believe me, this is purely an accident. I think this hairstyle is barely acceptable." "Well, can you stop your brain? Door, I'm afraid I'll laugh. I am going to kill you." Gina's eyes were bloodshot, and the ground suddenly collapsed under her feet. She crossed a distance of several meters in the blink of an eye, and her tall figure rushed to Lu Chuang in an instant, and her fists carried terrible force. Lu Chuang immediately retreated to create a distance, turned his head and narrowly avoided a right uppercut, and Gina's fist hit the rear container hard. The steel shell dented instantly, and let out a scream of unbearable weight. Taking advantage of Gina's short pause, Lu Chuang raised the revolver in his hand, leaned towards Gina's head and shot. Call. The bullet turned into flames, setting Gina's head on fire. Her hair was brutally murdered again. Gina didn't even have time to take care of Lu Chuang in front of her. She screamed and slapped the flames, and when the flames dissipated, the hair on her head was burned into pits and pits. Little harm, but highly insulting. Touching her diarrhea, Gina's face was so gloomy that she could squeeze out water. Her eyes were fixed on Lu Chuang, her eyes were full of murderous intent, and her cold voice almost came from between her teeth. Squeezed out abruptly. "When I catch you, I will pull out your hair one by one." Lu Chuang asked in surprise. No, is it urgent?" Hearing his words, Gina gritted her teeth. With this new look, it seems that there is a posture of glaring King Kong. "Damn guy." Gina let out a low growl, and her speed increased a bit, her body violently clinging to Lu Chuang. When dealing with enemies armed with guns, she chose to close the distance with great experience. She was tall and cumbersome, but her body movements were extremely agile. There were obvious signs of fighting between her movements. Lu Chuang launched a fierce offensive. However, as if Lu Chuang had predicted it in advance, he kept moving his feet and dodged her fist in various strange postures. The muzzle flashed, and several flames accurately ignited Gina's head. Facts have proved that once a woman is rage, she is much more crazy than a man. In this state, Gina didn't care about the image anymore. She let her hair be ignited by the flames, and just like this, with her head in flames, she frantically waved her fists at Lu Chuang. "Ghost Rider, is that you?" Lu Chuang was startled. He didn't expect Gina to be so fierce. Seeing that he couldn't keep the distance, Lu Chuang immediately reached out and took out a grenade. Noticing Lu Chuang's movements, Gina snorted coldly, and said disdainfully, "You don't think the grenade is useful to me, and don't forget that you are also in the explosion range. I want to see if you dare to detonate." "Okay, then show me clearly." Lu Chuang pulled out the safety pin without any hesitation, and closed his eyes like dying. Gina was not afraid. She jumped at Lu Chuang with wide eyes. The next moment, a dazzling glare flickered. Boom. Ah! Following the huge amounts of explosion, Gina covered her eyes and fell down in pain, tears streaming down her eyes, and her ears were temporarily deaf. It's not a King grenade at all. It's a flash bomb. Even with Gina's steel body, the eyes and ears are still the most vulnerable parts. As a result, she opened her eyes stupidly and stared directly at the flash bomb, which was unbearable to anyone. Now she only feels the pain in her eyes. Nothing could be seen in the vast expanse of whiteness, and the ears could not hear anything. "I didn't expect it. It looks like a grenade, but it's actually a flash bomb." At such a close distance, Lu Chuang was also affected, and his thin eyelids could not block the strong light at all. He was crying and did not forget to introduce his own creativity, although both parties at the moment could not hear each other's voice. "I am going to kill you." "Ah, what are you talking about? I can't hear you louder." "Go to hell." Under Lu Chuang's self-healing ability, the body quickly counteracts the negative state of the flash bomb. As the sight gradually recovered, Lu Chuang saw Gina standing not far away with a naked head, punching the Shaolin Vajra fist vigorously, and constantly uttering various curses from her mouth. At the same time, a large number of armed soldiers rushed onto the deck from the stairs. Obviously, they were ambushing at the waste recycling station before, and came here after hearing the explosion. When they ran to the deck of the abandoned cruise ship and saw Gina punching there, they couldn't help but froze. Where is the nun so fierce? Immediately afterwards, they saw Lu Chuang armed to the teeth, and Wade waving katana in the distance, and they knew immediately that this was the enemy they were going to ambush. As a result, no one expected that the enemy would not go through the main entrance, but sneaked in behind and took their large troops away. The armed soldiers didn't have time to think about it, and immediately drew their guns and shot at Lu Chuang, who was the closest. Da 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 da. As the howling bullets hit, Lu Chuang immediately used a sliding shovel to hide behind the container next to him. Seeing that the target disappeared, the armed soldiers did not stop firing. Instead, they sent out a group of small teams to suppress the firepower, and the rest of them continued to approach Lu Chuang's position on two sides with their guns in hand. At this moment, the crisp sound of clanging continued to be heard from the rear of the container. I saw a lot of smoke coming out of the container, and as the wind direction gradually covered the positions of the armed soldiers, the sight of the armed soldiers was blocked, and there were a few dull bangs in their ears. "Damn it, he's up there." Someone found Lu Chuang on the container. But it was too late. Lu Chuang, who was standing on the container, jumped high and jumped directly into the middle of them. The firearm in his hand had been replaced with a modified M93R submachine gun. Bullet time is on. Lu Chuang only felt his blood pressure rise suddenly, his heart beating violently, and the movements of all armed soldiers became slow. Suddenly, the arms are raised and the trigger is pulled. Bang bang bang. Lu Chuang's figure slid and spun around, constantly swinging his arms to control the rapid movement of the muzzle of the gun, seemingly indiscriminate shooting, but each bullet could accurately shoot through the enemy. In less than a few seconds, all the bullets in the magazine were fired. But the gunfire didn't stop. As the new magazine was loaded into the pistol through the device, the muzzle flame flickered in the smoke again. Every time the fire flashed, there would be one less standing figure in the smoke. Under the oppression of fear, the armed soldiers roared. He raised his automatic rifle to fight back, but he couldn't hit that damned figure. God, what kind of monster is this? The armed soldiers are terrified. This battle is not fair to them at all. Lu Chuang doesn't care what they think, he has a super high school level sharpshooter, facing this kind of direct shooting skills is almost like hitting a child. Before the smoke dissipated, he shot and directly solved it. Last person. Boom. The corpse with its head exploded fell on its back. Lu Chuang grabbed 2 pistols and stood quietly on the pile of corpses. This is what Gina saw when she regained some vision. At this time, she realized that she had been punching a whole set of bastard punches at a distance of more than 10 meters. Fack. Gina growled with red and swollen eyes, grabbed a giant tire beside her, and threw it at Lu Chuang like a discus. Although Lu Chuang saw the roar of the violent wind, he had no time to dodge the tire that was bigger than himself, so he could only forcefully raise his right arm to block the front, and suddenly felt a terrifying force coming. His whole body he was directly hit by the tire and flew to the iron wall more than 10 meters away. Lu Chuang spat out a mouthful of blood, his right arm was severely twisted and shapeshifting, and it looked like a broken bone. Gina walked in front of him with red and swollen eyes. Seeing Lu Chuang's miserable state, she showed a cheerful smile. Disgusting little bug, I finally caught you, do you have any last words? Yes, I want to take a sip of happy fat house water. Lu Chuang trembled, took out a can of Coke from his trouser pocket, and pulled off the cap with one hand. Go to hell and drink. Gina smiled cruelly, and raised her fist to smash his head. However, the can of Coke suddenly exploded. Send out a familiar strong light. Unexpectedly, it looks like a can of Coke, but it's actually a flash bomb. Lu Chuang burst into tears, proudly introducing the idea. Gina. In spite of Gu Bai's boundless vision, Gina continued to raise her fist and hit the location in memory. However, Lu Chuang had expected her action long ago. A lazy donkey rolled to the left, and at the same time took off the shotgun that had been carried behind his back, put his half-recovered arm against the barrel, and assumed a standard shooting posture. Squeeze the trigger directly at Gina's position. Boom. Even with Gina's steel and iron bones, at such a close range, the terrifying power of the shotgun still knocked Gina back a few steps, and the faint pain in her ribs made her groan. Finally broke the defense. Lu Chuang's heart skipped a beat, and as his sight recovered, he mercilessly pulled the trigger towards Gina. Bang 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 bang. Gunshots rang out one after another, and the shotgun bullets made Gina back away. The invisible Gina could only be helpless and furious, passively accepting Lu Chuang's shooting. She couldn't understand why Lu Chuang, who was also affected by the flash bomb, could still shoot so accurately, and why he could still operate a shotgun with huge amounts of recoil after his arm was broken. Only Francis, who was fighting with Wade, noticed Lu Chuang's rapidly recovering arm. Even faster than Wade's self-healing. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe.